Hey everyone, Caleb with Antique Book Collective, and today I'm telling you why you should not source your antique books from an antique bookstore. So I know right off the bat you guys are probably thinking, wait, if I can't source my antique books from an antique bookstore, where am I supposed to find these things? Like, what's your problem, Caleb? Are you stupid? Are you like touched in the head, you know? Well, guys, the thing is, a lot of antique bookshops, they know what they've got. And if they don't know what they've got, they probably think, well, this book's 200 years old, it's worth at least $20 or at least $200, something along those lines. So you're either dealing with someone who's an expert in the value of these books, or you're dealing with someone who's a little convoluted on what these things are actually worth. We've all been to an antique bookshop, guys, that you're the only person in there and you're like, oh, I wonder why no one's in here. There's some cool things here. And then you get approached by the owner or some employee and they're like, hey, you want to buy this table right here? It's 200 years old and I'll give it to you for $15 right now. And you're just like getting the hard sell, you know? You're like, wow, I've dealt with used card salesmen and they were not as pushy as you, my dude. You have these people and they will push to try to sell something, and yeah, they might give you a table for $15. Well, trick is they bought it for $1 and they've been sitting on it for 50 years. But some of these people, they might give you a good deal, but more often than not, you're going to pay an arm and a leg, or possibly 2 arms and a leg for some of these books. You're going to pay a whole lot for these things. Whereas if you decide to go somewhere else, hint hint, check out my other videos or just keep watching for a little bit, you can find books for better deals. And guys, if you're finding a book in an antique bookstore, that thing doesn't need rescued. It's not going to go to the dump, most likely. That person's going to sit on that book for 100 more years, and they're going to wait for someone to buy it from them for $500, even though it's only worth $5. Whereas if you go to some of these other places, so I'm going to list off a couple for you guys right now: Friends of the Library book sales, your local Goodwill outlet in particular, other thrift shops, estate sales, all these places, a lot of them will throw stuff away if it's been sitting at their place too long. Or like a lot of Friends of the Library sales guys, some of them pack everything up and wait for the next year. Other ones, they actually donate all those books to a recycler, or they will sell these books to a recycler. And you know what that means? That means these books, guys, they're getting ground down into pulp and they're going to go into some new books, which is cool. It's fine and dandy. But when you're dealing with books that are a couple hundred years old, it's like, this book's been around enough that I think it deserves a little bit better of a fate than that, you know? So that's one of the reasons why I personally like going to those other places, is I'm actually rescuing some of these antique books from actually getting just outright murdered. But in addition to that, you're going to get a whole lot better of a deal. Again, if you guys go to an antique book shop or something along those lines, or just an antique shop in general, you're going to pay a lot for a lot of these books. I've been to some of them where it's like, oh, that's a cool antique book right there. In fact, I actually bought one and sold one of these not too long ago. I actually went to an antique shop a couple months ago and I was like, hey, I actually just sold one of those copies of that book, and I was about to grab it, but then I saw a price tag and it was like $40 or something like that, and I was like, I didn't even sell mine for $40. Why do you think yours is worth $40? What in the world? So obviously I didn't touch it, because, you know, you touch it, you take it, I think, sometimes with some of these places. But guys, you can go to some of these places and they will ask for that much money for it. And if you challenge them on it, they'll be like, oh no, I saw someone else selling it for this much, so it's worth that much. And you might talk them down 40%. But in the case of this one book that I saw, I think they were selling it for $40. I think I had sold it a couple weeks prior for like between like $15 and $20. So even if you talked them down a certain amount, you're not going to talk them down to the point that you're going to actually make money on that deal. So guys, you're going to find some of these people, they very well may have found that book for $40 somewhere else, but that doesn't mean that it's something you guys should do. If you guys are doing the business like I recommend you guys do it, in fact, I recommend everyone does this, look up comps whenever you're buying anything. If you guys can't find a comp on a book, don't pay a lot for it. Potentially be like, hey, so I'm going to buy these books right here. I know what these are worth. I will pay you $40 for all these. I don't know what these books are worth. I'm taking a big risk on these. I'll give you $5 for these. You know, you can go along that sort of line. Of course, you don't want to say such a low number that they just say no and say get out of my store, but you can definitely negotiate on some of these things. Of course, people are more apt to negotiate if they know they're going to throw these things away later. They are willing to get whatever money they can on a lot of these things, whereas people that run the antique shops, they'll sit on it another 15 years. They don't care. But if you're doing an estate sale, Friends of the Library sale, all those sorts of things, they're like, hey, that thing's going in the dump next week. If I can get an extra $1 out of it, You bet I will do that right here and right now. So guys, that is something that you guys can definitely do. I recommend you guys source at those other places that I listed off. If you guys want to see me explain more about the different reasons I go to different places and not antique bookshops, you guys can check out the rest of my channel. You honestly can just click my channel down below, and then there's a little search bar on the thing. It's not the main YouTube search bar, but it's underneath my channel stuff. You can actually type in stuff like where to source for books, that sort of thing. I even have a playlist on it, I'm pretty sure, about where you should source for books if you guys are new to the business or if you've even been doing it for a hot minute. And that'll outline all the different places that you guys ought to go to get the best deals you can and to honestly save as many books as you can from getting thrown away. But with that said, back to the whole antique bookshop. So guys, I will admit, I am a nerd for some antique things. In fact, if you guys look in the back there in the background, you guys will actually see an old postal scale. If I went to an antique bookshop, they probably would have charged me probably for both my kidneys is what they would have taken for that. I've seen people selling those sorts of postal scales for like hundreds of dollars to $1,000 plus. But if you know where you're going, if you go to the right places, you can get it for a little bit less. I mentioned in another video, guys, I got that postal scale and it works. Everything works on it. I got it for free. Free is a little bit less than 2 kidneys, if you know what I mean. So guys, you just need to look around. You need to find these certain places that will have the good deals for you. The places that are a little off the beaten track. You will get your hands a little bit dirtier. You're not going to walk into a shop that's just amazing because it has 2,000 books in it. You're just like, oh, that one right there is from the year 1500. I don't even know of an ancestor that old, you know? Like, you're going to see some amazing things at antique bookshops. You're going to feel inspired. You're going to want to start your own antique bookshop most likely because, I mean, the stuff you see is just amazing. But you're not going to be able to afford most of it. That book from the 1500s that you were so shocked to see, they probably want $1,500 for it or more. So if you guys are doing this, you really want to find out what books are worth. You want to find out what you are going to pay for them. And you want to see what kind of profit margin you can do if you are selling these yourself. Or potentially you are buying these for the sake of investing. I've talked to quite a few people who actually do buy antique books for the hopes of investing in them, and yeah, I'll buy it for $20 right now. That's the full value, but I expect in another 50 years it's going to be worth $30, $40, $200, something along those lines. Like, guys, if you bought a first edition of Harry Potter when it first came out, you paid, I don't know what Scholastic was charging back in the day for it, but let's say you paid for the hardcover, I'm going to just throw out a number, $19. It's worth a lot more than $19 right now, guys. It's worth a lot more. There are a lot of things that you guys can invest in and make a lot of good money on. Of course, I'm not telling you to invest in antique books. Do your own investment stuff. I'm not an investment advisor, all that sort of stuff. But it is something I've talked to a lot of people that do that sort of thing with. And one of the things people do is antique books in general. And guys, I've had so many books, antique books that I've sat on for a couple of years because I'm like, okay, it's not quite to the point that I think it's worth a lot, so I'm going to sit on it for 2 years. And a lot of these books, guys, they've actually gone up in value to the point that it's like, yes, now I'm going to list this. So that's something that you guys can potentially check out yourselves. But again, you don't want to overpay for these things. So remember how I mentioned earlier that I sold that one book for like 15 or 20 bucks and the antique shop was asking like 40 for it. Odds are if you pay 40 for it, you're not going to make your money back anytime soon. You're going to have to sit on it for another 200 years with all the government inflation from all their money printing. And then you might make some money, but at the end of the day, you're probably still losing because inflation was a lot more than that. There are books, guys, that you can definitely overpay for that aren't that valuable. Just because a book's an antique does not mean it's valuable whatsoever. Of course, that doesn't mean I want to throw them away. I cringe at the thought of throwing away antique books, but it is something that you guys need to consider. It's like, okay, I'm not going to pay $50 for a book that I know I can't sell, that sort of thing. So depending on what you guys are doing, yeah, you might want to buy an antique book just for the sake of adding it to your collection, but if you're like me, you're buying them to sell them. You're buying them to sell them to amazing families that want to enjoy these things, and usually it's not families. Normally it's just like a mom or a dad or a grandma or a grandpa, you know, someone who wants the book themselves. Generally, you don't want your kids getting into these books until they're older, because, guys, let me tell you, there have been so many antique books that I've gone through that have crayon, rips, tape, all these sorts of things from the kids, and it's just like, ooh, this book was so beautiful, and you let your kid draw smiley faces on page 4. Why? In crayon. Why? And, guys, there are ways to get some of those things out of the books. I want to say I heard lemon juice works to get rid of crayon, and I did do it, and it mostly worked. No, I'm not going to say mostly worked. It kind of worked. Would not plan on doing it ever again, though, because if you guys watched National Treasure, you remember the whole scene where they put the lemon juice on the Declaration of Independence to get the ink showing, like, that makes people cringe, and I actually have a lot of people reach out on my channel and like, oh, you did this to a book, you're a horrible person, you should die, da 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 da, because you damaged the book, da 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 da. Yeah, you will end up damaging books if you guys mistreat them, if you clean them improperly, all these sorts of things, but other times you are saving a book, so either it goes in the dump or it gets a little bit damaged. You guys take your pick. I've tried to explain that to some of these. I'm gonna call them book Nazis. Honestly, you can try to explain it to these people, but they still think you're the worst person ever because how dare you try to clean a book that was gonna get burned? But whatever. But with all that said and done, though, guys, I hope this video was helpful for you. I hope it inspires you guys to hopefully not go to a antique bookshop. But big caveat: it doesn't mean you shouldn't go to them. Potentially go to them. You can patron them because, let's face it, these antique bookshop owners are just like us. We can find some camaraderie with them. Of course, some of them are going to be hardcore introverts. I've dealt with them. Let's face it, people who love books generally can be introverted, but there's also some that are great extroverts and, okay, maybe not great extroverts. They're extroverted. I'm sorry, introvert people, for saying you're not great. You are great. We're all great in our own ways, but there's going to be all these sorts of people. You can strike up conversations. You can find some great friends, and honestly, hint, hint, the people running antique bookshops, if they've been getting antique books, that means they might just know where to get some more. And let's face it, if they have an entire shop and the shop is entirely full, they might have a few boxes in the back that they're like, well, I don't know what these are worth. I'll give them to you for $40 a box. Or they'll be like, yeah, I actually buy all my books from this place over here. You guys can get some tips and tricks, especially if you're young like me. I'm a young buck. I know diddly squat about everything. Whereas a lot of people know everything about everything. I know diddly squat, and because I know diddly squat, I am so stinking willing to ask questions. And guys, that's something that you have to be willing to do in business and life, all that sort of stuff. Ask questions. There are always people who know more than you. If you're the smartest person in the room, you need to find a different room. That's what I hear a lot of people say, and that's something that's so stinking true. I mean, you can't always be the smartest person in the room, because when you're an expert, they actually have things about learning curves. When you think you're an expert, you actually stop learning more. Whereas if you always admit that you're an idiot that knows diddly squat, you're always going to learn more. You're always going to seek more knowledge. And when you seek more knowledge, you slowly become a little bit more of an expert. But don't let it go to your head, because you're going to stop your growth. The thing about life, guys, is continuous growth. If you can't continue growing, you start dying. So guys, please be sure to always ask these questions. Of course, don't bother the antique bookshop owner if he's busy with something or she's busy with something. But if it's slow, bother them a little bit. Be like, hey, I'll buy this book right here. Tell me your story. Okay, what about this? I'm interested in doing this myself, like that sort of thing. Of course, they might not talk to you if you're not buying anything, so be sure to buy something, but it's something that you guys can definitely do. So with all that said and done, though, guys, I just wanted to, again, encourage you guys, shop around for your antique books. Don't give up if you don't find any antique books for a good deal at a certain place or for the first 5 places, guys. I've been doing this for years. I've been to so many places where it's like, well, that was a waste of gas, but I've been to so many others where it's like, I just found one book that paid for the entire trip, plus a lot more. So guys, that's the sort of thing that you guys can definitely do with this business. It's an adventure every single day. It's so much stinking fun. Honestly, there are times that I'm not able to do the business as full-time as I'd like to. I'm actually right now doing it quite part-time, but I miss the adventures. Like whenever I'm not out sourcing books or not out like chatting with people about the books, it's like, oh, I'm missing out on an adventure. There's a hidden treasure, a buried treasure out there somewhere, and I'm missing out on it. I'm missing out on my adventure. There's just so many fun things, guys, that you guys can do and that you're missing out on if you're not doing it right now. So with that said and done, thank you for watching. If you guys would like to learn more about antique book selling, all that sort of stuff, be sure to subscribe. I'd love to see you guys out and about in my channel, in my community, all that sort of stuff. You can subscribe below. You guys can join and see some more stuff that I'm doing, because I want to share other things that I'm doing that isn't necessarily antique book stuff. A lot of people have requested I share those sorts of things, so that's what I have the whole join membership area for, is all the extras that I do, plus some other stuff. But with that said and done, though, guys, thank you for watching. Again, be sure to subscribe. Please drop a like. Drop a comment, guys, with what you guys think about antique book selling. Tell me some of your guys' favorite stories about the antique book shops, or some of your favorite finds, guys. There are so many amazing finds that people find, and it's just like, you found what? Where? It's just really fun, and like for other people that are scrolling through comments, it's really fun to see some of the stories that you guys actually have come up with. I've seen some amazing things from you guys. So with that said and done, though, again, please like, comment, subscribe, all that sort of stuff, and check out one of my other videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.